Hello. How are you?
Holy cow. Wow.
Been so long. Oh my gosh.
I think the last time that we saw each other was that career day when you came into the school and you
Probably.
were talking to the kids in the studio and wherever else.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Not pre-COVID. Maybe a year or two before that even.
Way pre-COVID.
Oh my gosh. That was so long ago. That was so much fun. I love doing that.
We haven't done those things since when we've only really been back for less than a year technically.
That was a lot of fun. I remember a lot of people came, like all different industries and stuff. Like that was really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was great because the kids need to see that. Desperately. We're going to get this started. Hello and welcome to Change for the Better, the Power of Arts in Education, episode 22.
I'm Stacy Tiro, a high school performing arts teacher for over 25 years. I've taught a lot of amazing people. Now that so many of my students are adults, they'll teach me how, through the lessons in my classroom, they have been changed for the better.
Oh my gosh.
22. That's my lucky number, so this is perfect.
Is it?
It is. My birthday's on the 22nd, so it's always been my lucky number.
It's good. I like that. It was meant to be. Serendipity.
Exactly.
So I am truly, truly honored to talk to today's guest. Like Greg Kreindler before her, that's episode 13. Check that one because that's a really great one if you like baseball art. This young woman never ever stepped foot into the spotlight, preferring instead to get involved in every other aspect of technical and production theater. She loved being involved in the inner workings of how shows are put together and brought to life. And in fact, she did so much of that work that she was the only one in my tenure so far to achieve National Honor Thespian status. That's a pretty big one. So she had hit at the time what she calls the Thespian trifecta, which is president of Spots and Flats in sophomore year, president of Caps and Bells in her junior year. Those are our apprentice leadership organizations. And then finally, the president of the entire troupe in her senior year. And when I say that she was immersed in the thespian zeitgeist, I'm not kidding. It literally ran through her veins. It's the only thing that she did so much of. Most kids don't leave thespians with the intention to pursue a profession in the arts. Oftentimes, they'll say, oh, I want to become an actor. Oh, I'm like, oh, okay, great. Well, go to college and figure that out. So even less of these kids actually achieve enough success to maintain a career in it, a long career. And she was one of those very rare cases. After she graduated, she entered NYU's ultra competitive Tisch School of the Arts, where she studied in their technical theater program in stage management and lighting design. And then she earned a BFA in theater with a minor in producing. So this is no joke. And then her professors were pros actively working on Broadway. She interned with the Blue Man Group and worked closely with a litany of talent who are currently starring in theater and film today. And of course, there's too many to list, but if you look up Michael R. Jackson and Ali Stroker, you'll get the caliber of people that she was talking to. After college, she started out in stage management for a couple of off-Broadway shows. But unfortunately, the recession was not kind to live theater. And she made the transition into film and TV about a year and a half after graduating. With zero film or TV experience, she took a random job at a casting company as a casting assistant, hoping that her skills from her theater education would be transferable to the TV and film realm, which for an actor is kind of hard because they're really different skills. But on the production end, it worked out for her. She had a new calling. Within a year, she worked her way up to a casting director. And then over the next 11 years, she worked her way up to the highest level of casting director and now manages their New York office. She has a ridiculously impressive resume. I'm almost intimidated looking at her resume. She's worked on over 250 episodes of television, like hello, Law and Order SVU, as well as lots of films and other TV shows. So if you check out her on her IMDb page, just prepare to be blown away at the list of accomplishments that she has made. I have talked enough. Now it's time to hear from you. So, question number 1. What is your name? What's the year that you graduated from high school? And tell me a little more about what you do now.
All right. Well, I'm Brittany Gischner. I graduated high school in 2006. That ages me a little bit, but that's fine. And now what I do, so I work in background casting. And basically it is any person on a TV show or in a film or something that is in a scene that does not have lines. So when you look at a TV show or something to that effect, think about the people that are in the restaurant scene. There's the principal actors with all the lines, and then there's everybody else filling the scene. Those people aren't there by accident. They are handcrafted and curated by people like me to be in those scenes. And that is what I do for various television shows and films. And now managing our New York office, I do it for more than just 1 or 2. It's literally all of the shows that my company does in New York, which is a good chunk of the market.
Ooh, what is that? It's central casting?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So I'll put the website link on that as well, just in case there's anybody who's looking for some work as background actors.
Definitely. It's all paid work. And central casting is real. People think it's just like a catchphrase that's in the industry. Like, oh, they're straight out of central casting. We are a real company that phrase is based off of. And for those that don't know what it means that somebody kind of looks exactly like what they are portraying. Like there's a clip of President Barack Obama getting onto Air Force One, and he's greeted by the pilot, as all presidents are when they're getting on their planes. And he says to him, "You look like you're straight out of central casting. You're exactly what a pilot should look like." And so that phrase is based off of my company, and it's used everywhere.
Ubiquitously.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know something about you now, adult Brittany. Right. But we're going to start to turn back the hands of time for a few minutes using your adult brain.
Mm-hmm.
Describe your adolescent self. What were you like in high school?
Oh, in high school, I wanted to do a little of everything. You listed my high school resume quite well. But, I was involved in a lot of different things because I wasn't really sure, not even that I wasn't sure, but I liked to do so many different things. And Thespians, I was in all the way. I, did other activities at school too, but, I think I was just very active and engaged and trying a little bit of everything back then, which growing up, you learn you can't do everything all at once. So I'm glad that I did it when I was younger. Obviously it was different when you're younger, you have less responsibilities, but, I'm glad I got to try a lot of different things back then.
How did you handle stress then? How did you handle the difficulties of being a teenager?
I think then the structure of school and Thespians and, those type of things helped with the stress. Because, when you're doing a lot of different things, you have to compartmentalize what you're doing and how you do it to make sure, one, that it's getting done, but also just like the people you're interacting with and all of that different stuff. So I think the structure of what you have as a kid, it helps there. Whereas nowadays I have to create my own structure, which is very difficult when you're making it yourself. It's definitely a different ballgame.
You're doing a lot of remote work now, right?
We were yes. My company for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, we were completely remote. Now we do a little bit of a hybrid, but even working with the productions that we work with, I used to have to go to meetings in person. Now all those meetings are remote. So it's very different on how we interact with people, which I think just everybody in general, how you interact nowadays is a little different, but that change and making sure you still hold those relationships and still, have those moments is very different when you're living in a Zoom world.
It's true. At first I was like, I hate these Zoom things. I get nothing in person. But I actually have gotten to see people like with this podcast thing. I'm now seeing people, face to face who I haven't seen in 5, 10, 15 years and having, real conversations with them. So I think that as fake as the virtual world can seem, I think there are things that you can extract from it that you didn't really think that, you could. Years before it ever existed.
No, it's true. I mean, exactly what you're saying. I've reconnected with so many people, especially during quarantine when, nobody had anything to do. And it was, oh, let's hop on a Zoom. And I mean, my college class, it was a very small program that I was in. We did like a 10-year Zoom reunion. There were some people I hadn't spoken with in years. We were on the phone, on the Zoom till like 5 o'clock in the morning because we hadn't seen each other for so long, and we were able to catch up. And it wasn't like, oh, I got to catch my train home, or I got to hop in the car and drive. We're on our Zooms, and that was it. I hit a button when I was done.
Right. We're in the pajamas and now we can go to bed.
Exactly. No, it's great. I think Zoom has definitely been helpful for communication and keeping in touch with people, or getting in touch with people that we just didn't have before.
Yeah. Making the most of a really weird situation.
Exactly. That's a very weird situation.
It was just weird, the whole thing.
Exactly.
So Brittany never actually took dance.
I did not.
It was not her bag. Performance was not her thing. So when we talk about the studio or the classroom here, we're talking about your thespian experience, because you were completely entrenched, like just all in. So what was something or things that happened in your thespian experience that helped you to manage or to regulate your teenage self?
That's a good question. A lot of thespians as a whole, like when we would go to crew, I don't know if you guys still call it crew or things like that. I think it, one, helped create, I know I mentioned structure before, but it also helped create kind of like a friendship with all the people there that I might not have been friends with previously. But it helped create a little bit of a community that I think really just helped me get through that high school period in the best way possible. It really highlighted the things that I enjoyed, the people that enjoyed those things with me. And, one thing I always say about the high school that I went to anybody who's not familiar with it, is we didn't really have cliques. Cliques weren't a thing. And I use myself as an example in that, I was very involved with thespians. But when people think of like the theater kids, they never think of the mix of people that we had. And I think that is one of the things I loved the most about being part of Thespians, is it was all walks of life. I know that's a general statement, but it truly is. And I mean, I'm assuming it still is, but it was. We had honor students, the people that would in normal high schools, and other high schools might be the geeks or the skaters or the whatever. Like, we didn't really have those separate sections. We were all in Thespians together, all different types of people, which, I think helped me get through a lot of high school, because I had so many different people that I can talk to and rely on and hang out with. And again, people that were interested in the same things as me that I might not have known before Thespians.
Yeah, it's true. And it's the same now. And even we, sort of survived the pandemic as hard as it was. And it was really like 2 years of separation. And, theater is a group activity. Mm-hmm. So having to switch to virtual, that platform, and then coming back and, trying to sort of bring everything back was really, really challenging. But the thing that I've always enjoyed hearing at senior powwows and now through this podcast, that idea of family or community has come up several times now. And it's true. And it's not just thespians. I think theater, the act of theater in education anywhere, is really all about creating community.
Yeah.
Because you can't just have like one kind of person running the whole show. Mm-hmm. If you don't have the person whose interests are here and whose experience is here and whose talents are here, all working together, you can't make a big show happen. It just doesn't work.
It's true. That's true. And I think people don't realize how true that is outside of the high school experience. I went to college for theater. It's the same there. You have that community, you have that family where, yes, when you go to college for it, there's more people that are just theater. However, it's still so many different types of people, and theater as a whole, you can't put on theater unless you come together as a group. You just can't. Everybody needs each other to make it happen.
Very true. So what are some of the lessons that you learned then that you still use today?
Ooh. Well, the first one, I have a little keychain that I still have, and I keep it in a special place. Act well your part, there all the honor lies. That is the Thespian motto. To this day, I believe that to be one of the truest statements. And when it says act well your part, yes, they mean part of your, actor, theater, you're on stage, that's part. But I think it relates to life. If you act your part well, there's where the honor is. Do what you do and do it well. That is where the honor is. And that actually, I've taken that with me from the minute I learned that phrase to this second. That is one of my favorite phrases. And that I've taken with me, I'm going to say more than half my life at this point, because when I first learned it, it was a long time ago.
So act well your part, there all the honor lies is from Alexander Pope's essay on man. And it is the motto for the International Thespian Society, of which we are a member. And I get to remind kids or relay that to kids every single year at our thespian dinner. It's like I have like a paragraph that's all part of the speech. And at the end of them, the new inductees saying the thespian pledge, I read the motto. And I always get this like wonderful feeling like everybody here has done their part and they learn that their part is honorable and is important, and it's all different. And I don't know, there's this wonderful like good feeling that always kind of washes over me every time I get to say that.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. Anytime I read it, anytime I see it, it's just, there's a good feeling that I get. I believe it 100%. I've taken that with me my whole life.
Yay. It stuck.
Yes, it definitely did. And when it was funny, when I got to college, I didn't realize, well, I should have, that not everybody had a thespian troupe in high school. Like they had like theaters and, but having a thespian troupe wasn't just like everybody had it. So when not everybody knew what I was talking about, when I would mention things about thespians or that, that specific quote, I was like, really? You've never heard this before? I feel like that's the epitome of theater in general as well. Like, you should know this.
Yeah. And it is, of course, but thespians is a special kind of.
It's true.
How have you changed since you graduated high school?
What has changed? Well, when I went to college, I think it definitely opened up my eyes beyond the realm of our high school. I learned a lot about society and just not that I was in a bubble, but where I grew up, it was very unique. And, it was a very diverse place. And when I got to college, I didn't necessarily see that as much. And I didn't realize that the real world was very different than how I grew up. And I missed how I grew up. And for me, I always said when I got to college, it was culture shock backwards. Because growing up in East Ramapo, I felt like I was very open-minded and I got to see a lot of different culture. And I'm so grateful for how I grew up and the friends that I had and all of that. But when, I got to college, things were very different. So I had to adapt to a little bit of a different world because it was just very different. Mm-hmm. But with that, I met so many new people and did so many great things and expanded my horizons even more. And I think that bettered me as a person coming from East Ramapo, finding my way in college. And it just really made me more of it's going to sound corny, but a well-rounded person, I think, coming from the way I had grown up and then going to college, especially being in theater where everybody is so open-minded and so welcoming. And so it's not just a stereotype. People say that about theater. It is very true. I think that just definitely changed. I'm going to say changed my perspective on things because I think I went into it with a good mindset, but I think it just opened my eyes to so much more what is out there. The entertainment world in general, like it is very different than what anybody could imagine. So many walks of life. And it's been eye-opening, which is great. And I love every second of it, even now in television as well. I think it's just made me a more well-rounded person.
It's weird. I grew up in North New City, Clarkston, North New City. where most people look like me. And then when I went to Spring Valley and most people didn't look like me, it was like that sort of, whoa. And so when you grow up in that, for lack of a better term, melting pot, I think that's a cliche, saying, but when there is such diversity in the people that you are, looking at, and that becomes your bubble, that is not really reflective of what's out there in the world. Although I was a little surprised to hear that, because NYU, you're, downtown in the city, you would think that's also like the epitome of diversity, but maybe in that program or in that school, maybe a little less so.
I would say it wasn't even just necessarily the program or the school, but people don't know where you come from or know your background, or, they might have certain expectations of who you are without knowing you. And so I felt, when I first got to school, people who I normally would have on any given day in growing up tried to be friends with, tried to talk to, didn't want to talk to me because where they grew up, it was different. I never once even thought that would be something that I had to think about, that like other people wouldn't want to talk to me because from where they grew up, it wasn't a melting pot, to use what you said there. And I had to learn not to make expectations on other people because they didn't know me. They didn't know where I came from, my history, my background. I had a little bit of a learning curve, just with interactions with people because they didn't know me. And I
think anybody who goes to school, who goes to college in a very different space than the bubble of their high school experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as it is, moving on to college is an eye-opening experience, and it's an expansion of who you are and what you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sort of like it doubles down when the cultural perspective is.
Oh yeah, no, it's very true. But I will say, especially if you said downtown Manhattan, there's so much. The diversity is, I love it. In school, it was relatively diverse as well. It's just I had to learn a couple things in how to interact with other people that, again, didn't grow up the way I grew up.
Right. And sometimes you have to learn the hard way.
That is true. I'm glad though. My roommate in college, I actually went to high school with as well. And so I had a friend with me from the start, which was nice.
That is good. That's good. That's so important. It's like you have that little security blanket.
That's what it felt like. It was very comforting to know that I at least had somebody that knew me, and exactly. And when we went from there, and then it was great. I loved college.
Yeah. First semester of college. Ooh, that is the eye opener.
It really is. And I was still 17 when I started college. My whole first semester, I was 17, still a young kid.
Yeah. You're the baby.
Oh yeah.
It's okay. Yeah. You'll always be younger than everybody. You'll turn 50 last. It's all good.
We're all still 29. It's fine.
Exactly. What would your adult self tell your high school self to help ease the way?
Ooh, I think to start, I would tell a high school self, don't sweat the small stuff. I think back then, like we were talking about, I did so much that I always wanted everything to be perfect, or at least to make sure that I'm doing something right. Not that I want to do things wrong, but don't sweat the small stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not life or death. I'm not curing cancer, maybe one day, but then I was not. Even as you move into adulthood, don't sweat the small stuff. And I know that's such a simple phrase and people say it all the time, but you can't let that stuff weigh you down, stress you out. If there's nothing you can do about it, there's nothing you can do about it. And that's that. I use that in my job every day because I do work in a very high stress, high anxiety type of career field.
No, really?
Yeah. 13-hour days, no problem. 16-hour days, I got you. But it's literally, if there's nothing I can do, then there's nothing I can do. That's it. Don't let it keep me up at night. Don't let it stop me from eating, those type of things. And I, every day, to tell myself that, but that is something I've learned now that if I would have known then, at a different scale of it, obviously, but don't sweat the small stuff.
It might have made for a little more relaxed experience.
I would agree with you there.
I can't tell you. Well, two things. One, that phrase has been used on this podcast for that question many times.
But it shows you how true it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. And then second, I can't tell you how many times I have to like talk kids off the ledge because they're panicking or their anxiety, is spiking. And I'm like, it's all good. You're fine. Let's bring this down. I should just say, don't sweat the small stuff just more often.
I mean, I think back then and I remember all those things that used to stress me out or make me upset or those type of things. And looking back on it, I'm like, that was not a big deal. Like, why did you let that get to you? Obviously, I made it through that, but again, a very simple phrase, but I think it applies. It definitely applies.
So speaking of sweating the small stuff, what are you grappling with now? What are you still like?
What am I grappling with now? I think the hardest thing right now is balancing work and life, because as I mentioned, I like everything to be perfect. And when you work in such a high stress, high anxiety, high responsibility field, it does start to feel like things are life and death, but they're not. And so knowing when to call it a day so I can go out to dinner or meet a friend or have a conversation on the phone versus working 16 hours a day, like being able to balance that's probably one of the hardest things, is just figuring out that balance. And I have been working on it, and I feel like, I might be getting there, but it's always in progress. I don't think there's ever like you get to that point and you're like, great, I figured it out.
I agree. And I think that things sort of peak and valley, when we're in showtime, there are times when I'm like, I come home and then I'm still working on this, that, and the other thing. And then there are times when like I come home and I'm like, we're done. Think about anything else. And we need to do that. We need to recharge and kind of pull ourselves out of that, high stress, high anxiety.
I think too, because of technology these days, people can get a hold of you all times of day and night. They can email you, they can text you, they can call you. Work wasn't like, let's go back to the 70s and 80s when cell phones didn't exist. When you left work, but nowadays you don't ever. So I think it's drawing that line and sticking to it. And it's hard, but figuring out that line.
Yeah. And saying, I'm not answering this email. I will answer it at 7:00 tomorrow morning when I'm awake and I've had my coffee and I'm good.
Exactly. It's very hard to not do that. Half the time I'm like, oh, I want to reply. No, I'm not going to, but I need to, but I'm not going to.
Because then if you're answering something at 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night and they see the timestamp of when you're answering, then they're like, oh, they're up. They can do more, It's like,
exactly.
No.
It becomes an expectation also, like, oh, well, yesterday they responded at 10 o'clock. Maybe they'll respond again tonight at 10 o'clock. Yep.
Yeah, no. On to bed.
Exactly.
So looking back, we're looking back and we're looking ahead. Tell me one thing that you miss about your high school self. And then tell me one thing that's gotten better since you've become an adult.
It's a tough question. One thing I miss about my high school self, I think one thing that I do miss is being a little bit less of a people pleaser. And I say that when you're in the real world and you have a job, you have to people please for your job. And I think I was less of that in high school, and it gave me a little bit more of a freedom. But, when you work for a corporation or you work on different productions, you have to meet their needs. Yeah, I miss being a little bit more in control of my own self in that sense. Yeah, no, I do miss that. I think since I've been an adult.
We're not an adult.
Yeah, right. Not an adult, it's fine. I'm still working there, still working my way there. One thing that has gotten better, being able to make decisions that make you happy. You're not doing it for anybody else. Every decision I make, whether I was still in theater or, now in my current job, decisions that I make me happy, whether it's job, whether it's life, whether it's friendships. I'm not trying to appease anybody else in that sense. I'm making decisions to make me happy rather than also trying to appease other people.
It's nice when you can make other people happy, but it can't be at the expense of your peace of mind.
Exactly. When you're younger, I think sometimes you make decisions to make your friends happy or your family happy. And now I think about it and I'm like, well, if my friends aren't happy, but I'm happy, then maybe I shouldn't be their friend. Sometimes you have to think about those things. And, that might be an extreme example, but if I'm not happy, then why am I doing something?
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I was going to ask you, speaking about being happy, would you ever see yourself in tech theater again?
I think about that all the time. I don't think so at this point. I miss theater and I miss it so much. I think while I love film and television, it's a different beast than theater, but I don't think I would go back to theater. I would say I don't want to say I missed the boat, but things change and they change quickly. And the technologies that they're using now, the workflows are very different from 10 years ago, which is about when I, stopped doing theater in that sense. So I don't know if I would be able to play catch up to get me to the level I would need to be at,
right,
to have a career in it. Yeah, maybe go back to school. Exactly. So I don't think I would necessarily go back. Maybe in like a community theater sense, but I don't know if I would go like professionally theater again. Never say never, but I think film and TV is where I'm at these days.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was curious for the reasons that you listed. I was like, yeah, theater changes big time.
It does. It definitely. I mean, it was funny. I saw a Broadway show last night, and I was looking around the theater and I was looking at the lights, which I always do. When I see a Broadway show, I look at the technical aspects of it as well as the performance.
Yeah, I do too.
But I was looking at all the lights, and so many of them were moving lights. And 10 years ago, maybe they were using moving lights, but not that much.
No.
Almost all of the lights were moving lights. And I was like, I was a specialist in lighting back in the day. And now I'm like, I wouldn't even know how to program those anymore. Whereas years ago, I could have.
Funny side story. When you were in school, we had that strand board. And I think we had that strand board for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It finally busted, like it didn't work. And then we wound up renting because, spending $10,000 on a new digital board was not a thing. But then, we got money, and right as the pandemic hit us, we were delivered an ETC element board.
Nice.
But I don't even think I saw it until we came back from the pandemic.
Wow. Oh
so
my
I was
gosh.
sitting up in the light booth covered with the dual monitors with everything for a year and a half.
That's so crazy. And now a year and a half later, they probably have a brand new one out, and yours is not dated, but
yes. Well, no, it's certainly, but for our purposes, and of course it can accommodate all the moving lights and the stuff that I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be learning all that. Just let me do what I got to do. And
I
can do it easily, and a kid can figure out how to do it, I'm good.
It's funny that you mentioned the board, because I remember we used the strand board. That's the only board I ever knew. When I got to college, everything was ETC. I had to relearn how to use the boards because nobody used strand there. Everybody's like, what do you mean you don't know how to use this board? And I'm like, I had strand. I don't know. I have no idea. So I did learn it in college, but now what I learned then is probably not even useful anymore.
Sure. They have, ETC has like the ion, and that's what they use for the.
Sounds fancy.
Not us. We got the element too. It's working.
Hey, if it works, if it's not broken, don't fix it. If it works and for your needs, that's what matters.
It was perfect. So I'm thankful. It's one thing that the district got for us was a brand new light board. So yay for us. I've used it in 2 shows and a dance concert. So
oh my God, dance concerts. I remember lighting those for you. Those were so much fun.
Yeah, we're rebuilding, of course, our kids. I had this one great, amazing, he was a sophomore this year, and he's learning, little by little, but it was the kind of thing where he dabbled in it a little bit, and then it was like, oh, I love this. I'm like, yay, 2 more years. You're going to learn. You're going to know more than me. Yes.
I mean, that's kind of how you got me into it. I tried it a little bit, and then I was like, oh, I really like this. And then I would try a little bit more. And then by the end, it was everywhere.
That's right. You had mentioned the don't sweat the small stuff, and a very wise thing to say. If you could give another piece or pieces of sage advice to high school students now, what would it be?
I think one of the first things would be try it. If you're not sure, try it. That's kind of how I got into theater. I had no idea that I would love it. I just showed up for crew one day because I was like, that sounds cool. Let's try it. Why not? The worst that can happen is you don't like it, you do something else. And that, obviously not just for theater, it relates to anything. Try it. That even relates to food. Try it. If you don't like it, don't eat it again.
You don't have to finish it.
Exactly. So I think overall, that would be one piece. You're not stuck in the decisions you make when you're that age. And when I say that, I mean, if you walk in freshman year, and I'll use myself for example, I was like, I'm going to be an architect. That's freshman year. If you asked me what I was going to do, I was going to be an architect.
Wow.
I'm not an architect. If you asked me sophomore year what I was going to do, I was going to be a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. You're not stuck in the decisions that you make. I mean, and if you think about it too, I went to school for theater. I'm no longer in theater. You're not stuck in the decisions you make then. You can change your mind. You can find something you like better, but don't hold yourself back.
Yes, I love that. And several people have said that too. So I'm glad that you, the successful casting director, is reinforcing all of those things. That's very valuable. And I wanted to share something. I was talking to, I think it was somebody I was talking to towards the end of the school year who had like just joined up with Thespians. And this person said, well, I wanted to get involved with something. And I heard that the Thespians were like the cool kids. And I went,
whoa.
Cool kids? Yes.
I mean, yeah. When you think about it, kind of like there's so many different people in it. Yeah, they are the cool kids.
Well, I of course would always make that argument, but to the adolescent looking in, usually the thespians or the drama kids are, like the cast-offs and that kind of thing, stereotypically speaking.
Right.
But apparently if you're an outlier, you're a cool kid.
I agree. I 100% agree. I mean, I think that's one of the best things about Spring Valley in general. Again, when I was there, was we didn't have the stereotypical cliques. We didn't have the jocks, the stoners, the skaters, the weird theater geeks, which and I feel like in every high school movie, this is how they separate people. We didn't have that. We had such a mix of people in Thespians. Why couldn't they be the cool kids?
Right.
There was no one type of kid in that program. I also think about like the marching band in the high school. In my day, the marching band were the cool kids. I don't know how they are now, but
they're pretty big. Maybe not as big like nothing is really quite as big as, when you're in school, but it's still a strong program. It's still doing the things that, it is. And people still do gravitate towards it. So,
I mean, they were doing cool music. I remember they were in a movie at the time. I've since cast that marching band. I've with the director of the marching band, I have hired him and the students with him on multiple projects. They do cool things.
Yeah, they do. In fact, Julia, my older daughter, who just graduated from RCC.
Like, I remember when she was like 4.
Yeah, I know. Trust me. She was giving the commencement speech. I'm going to say that over and over because
that's amazing.
Freaking proud. Sometime after that, East Ramapo Marching Band comes down and does this like what we were like, oh, this is an impromptu show, It's just
awesome.
A really nice.
I mean, I remember when I was in high school, I never admit this out loud, but I'm about to. I was also a cheerleader. As they said in that Bring It On movie, our school had no gymnastics team. It was my last resort. But with that said, I remember we were at a football game somewhere, an away game. And they asked us, we ran into some marching band people in the hallway and they asked us, oh, is your marching band coming? And they were, and they're like, oh, what's the name of your marching band? Or what school do you? And I was like, oh, well, it's the East Ramapo Marching Band. It was like I said, a celebrity was coming. They were like, wait, seriously? That's your marching band? I was like, yeah. And like for us, it was normal, but for other places, like they were a big deal. And when they came in doing their strut and all of that, like they were cool. I will never forget that. They were like, that's your marching band? Yeah.
World famous, baby. World famous.
Yeah.
So now we are circling it back to adult Brittany. What are 3 self-care practices that you do today to help to center or to regulate yourself?
I keep saying that's a good question, but these are all very good questions you have. This one is going to sound, I think, very basic, as the kids say. Sometimes I just go and get a manicure, pedicure to relax myself. I'm not even, I don't really do a lot of the girly things. I don't get my hair, cut all the time and things like that. But it just, where I don't have to do anything, I show up, I let them take care of me. It relaxes me, it centers me, and I walk out with pretty hands and toes. And who doesn't love that? So that's one thing that I do. I try to see shows. I saw a Broadway show last night. I'll go to a museum or something that's just not sitting at home on my couch, watching television. Like I try to do something, and seeing a show. And I especially love seeing a show because that brings me back to my theater days and my love of theater. And I think it brings me back to me. Yes, I'm not in theater anymore, but that's still who I am. I always say you can take the theater kid out of theater, but you can't take the theater out of the kid. So I love seeing the shows because that just, that brings me back to who I am and foundationally what I, where I came from. So I do that. What else do I do? I enjoy New York City. I live in New York City. I work in New York City. I do New York City things. And I know that's very broad, but, I'll go to Governor's Island and just hang out for the day, or I'll walk the Brooklyn Bridge, or something that's just, you can only do it in New York City. And, it's my me time.
I love it. Oh gosh, Brittany. And really, I mean, I just was looking at some of the pictures that you sent me, the baby Brittany. Picture. You've got like a thing, it was probably from Spirit Week.
Oh, yeah. That was during Hell Week. I remember that specific photo. And we put spike tape on our faces because we were backstage, and why not? That's what we were doing. We put spike tape on our faces. Oh yeah.
They still have that pre-opening night crew tradition. They're like, you can't be here. I'm like, please. I've been here.
Not allowed to know. When I was looking through the pictures, I found some photos of things I'm not allowed to talk about because they're still thespian secrets. But I found some photos and I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that. Or, wow, I haven't seen that in years. And I loved the nostalgia of it. It brought me back home. I miss those days. It's just nothing will ever repeat or replace those experiences.
No, it's very true. You had talked about it being like the foundation of who you are. And that's certainly my hope, to build this as the foundation for who these kids will become as adults.
And honestly, it's true. I think whether they go into theater or the arts or whatever, having an arts foundation leads you anywhere in life.
And on that note, talk about the value of arts and education. I have to thank you for taking the time out after what I know is a busy day at work for you to come and talk to me here. And everybody stay tuned for next week for another installation of Change for the Better, the power of arts in education. Yay! Yay!
That was awesome.
Awesome.